Years before the First Order rose to power, a young Armitage Hux found himself struggling to meet the expectations of his father, Commandant Randall Hux. The elder Hux would openly express to Armitage, in front of other Imperial officers, how his son was utterly useless. But when Armitage dropped some refreshments he was carrying to his father and fellow Imperial officer called Brooks, his father and Brooks once again shown only contempt towards his son. The other Imperial officer, Brooks, took it upon himself to mock and shame Armitage by remarking to his father that licking up the liquid off the floor would save wasting it. With feelings of shame, Armitage is initially made to crouch down, but before he reaches the liquid, his father forcibly tells him to get up. What the two Imperial officers didn't count on was that Armitage would later have his revenge, while his father and the Imperial officer completely underestimated how dangerous and cunning he would become within the First Order. Years later, and now a general of the First Order, Armitage was aboard a shuttle with Kylo Ren, when the ship's hyperdrive and systems suddenly fail, sending the craft plummeting down into the nearest planet's atmosphere. Having crash-landed on the planet's surface, Ren saves them both, but all means of communication to the First Order command have been destroyed, leaving the two to reluctantly find themselves working together to make sense of the crash. Both realise their shuttle should not have simply malfunctioned like it did, and both suspected a plot to sabotage the shuttle. For someone in the higher echelons of the First Order, their deaths would have greatly elevated their status. While the two have a disagreement displaying their dislike for each other deep within the densely forested area, they become aware their arrival has not gone unnoticed. A hulking creature appears through the trees, forcing Ren to act, while Hux flees into the bushes close by. While the first creature is quickly defeated, several more appear through the trees and Ren struggles to fight them. Surrounded by the creatures, Ren is eventually knocked unconscious to the ground. At that moment, a white-bearded man emerges from the trees and stops the creatures. The man realises they've attacked a human being and shouts to Hux to stop hiding in the long grass. Hux recognises the man's uniform is from Alderaan. He tells Hux he fled to the planet after he learned Alderaan had been destroyed. Armitage was brought up by his father to hate everything that this man had stood for, but he knew that this was not the time to reveal who he was. Hux instead tells him the Empire had since fallen, and the unconscious man on the ground was living proof of that. The man tells Hux his name is Balisma. Balisma sees a resemblance in the unconscious Ren to Leia Organa, and recounts how he knew his grandfather and Organa too. Having told Balisma of Ben Solo and Leia Organa's bloodline, Armitage uses this association to portray that they are all on the same side, and Ben's parents had won the war against the Empire. Hux is curious as to why the man is still on the remote planet. Balisma tells Hux he couldn't risk alerting the Empire and lose this planet too. Emerging through the trees, Balisma leads them for a short while to his ship. It was a corvette from the old rebellion. Once inside the ship and helping Ren to recover, Hux reveals to Balisma that Vader and the Emperor are dead, and persuades him it's time to make a transmission and leave this world to enjoy peace now the war was won. Of course, this is all lies, but Balisma had no way of knowing after all that time in exile. Hux requests to use the ship's communication array to summon help. While waiting for the First Order to arrive, Hux maintains his deception by referring to Kylo Ren as Ben, and also how pleased Leia Organa would be to see her son. This behaviour by Hux confuses Ren while still trying to work out what had actually happened to him, and who was the white-bearded man that Hux had befriended. Eventually, a First Order troop transport arrives, but as the exit ramp lowers, it reveals Captain Phasma and a squad of stormtroopers. A confused Balisma watches on as the two green beasts are immediately killed around him. Hux orders Phasma not to kill Balisma, but instead to destroy the comms array. Before the exit ramp closes, he discloses he will enjoy knowing Balisma will be left on the planet while the First Order use it for target practice. While the troop transport prepares to leave the planet, Hux wants to know who had access to their shuttle. Having arrived at Starkiller Base, Hux and Ren immediately report a traitor has been identified for their shuttle's sabotage to a ghostly hologram of Supreme Leader Snoke. Wanting to personally deal with the traitor, Snoke grants Hux permission. Shortly afterwards, Hux alongside Captain Phasma locate and approach a high-ranking First Order Admiral, who happens to be called Brooks. It was the same officer who years before had mocked and humiliated him as a boy with his father. At first, Brooks pretends to be pleased to hear of Hux's safe return, but Hux isn't visiting Brooks for pleasantries. Phasma takes the Admiral's weapon away from him, while Hux points Phasma's blaster straight at Brooks. The Admiral reveals he was not the shuttle saboteur after all, but Hux already knew that. Armitage had already dealt with an engineer who had created a fault. An enraged Admiral Brooks realizes Hux just wanted an excuse to get rid of him, and shows some of the old disdain the elder officer had shown Hux with his father. Armitage reveals to Brooks how he killed his father because of how he was treated all those years ago, and Brooks swiftly realizes that he would be next. Before Brooks can respond, Hux shoots him with a cold ruthlessness. Armitage wants to enjoy this revenge over Brooks, and revel in how much the elder officer had underestimated him.